the ratio of shear to normal stress is enough to be close to failure. It's very important that at this point you use effective stress, not normal stress. Also, I want to have the 3D Mohr circles with effective stress. If you remember, we discussed a couple of lectures ago that whenever the ratio of tau over sigma n approaches the friction coefficient, that's an indicator of shear failure. Do you guys remember more or less what is the typical friction coefficient for a rock?
0.3?
0.6.
0.6.
Something like that, right? So it varies, but let's say 0.4 to 0.8. Let's assume that an average will be 0.6. So if this value approaches 0.6, then that might be close to shear failure. And after that, I'm going to ask you to do this not for a randomly generated set of fractures, but for two set of fractures which are at a particular orientation. And do that exercise again. Let me show you how the result is going to be, more or less. It's not going to be exactly the same, but you should get something similar. This is a nice example I like to show and summarizes what you have to do. Okay, so here you have your 3D Mohr circle, right? Principal stresses. Then 26 appears and 45. Let's see what else we have. Of course, this is normal stress. This is shear. This is a shear envelope or a shear failure. The closer you get to shear failure, the more likely some of those planes are going to be reactivated in shear, okay? What I mean with those planes, each of these points is a fracture which is over there, in that other plot here on the right. And you're going to do something very similar, but the difference is that you're going to make your own planes, your own fractures. But each of those is going to be a point inside this 3D Mohr circle. Let's see the color. The color means the ratio of shear to effective normal stress. So the closer you get, imagine a line that goes horizontal to there. The higher the slope, the more you get into this red area, which means higher shear to effective normal stress. And the lower you go, you see it gets blue. It means the lower that value is. So when you get to the red area, that means that there is more likelihood of shear reactivation or shear yield. Or for example, if you were doing monitoring induced seismicity or microseismicity, these are the fractures that are going to emit seismicity, not these ones. These are going to be the ones, because they're going to be reactivated in shear. Okay, so we said each of those points is one of these planes. I don't know if you see that very well, but let me zoom in a little bit more. now it looks like just a swarm of fractures, little fractures, little rectangles, but each of those has its own strike and dip. And the color of those planes is also telling you that, for example, here, the fractures oriented at this particular orientation are the ones in red over here, are the ones which are here. The ones in green are these green ones are the ones here, and the blue ones, there are not many of them, but there are a few, are those ones. You see that this one is perpendicular to the red. That's because it has a different orientation. It has a less likelihood to be reactivated in shear. Everyone understand this? Yes?
So what is the color of the fracture?
The color of the fracture means the ratio of shear to effective stress. So the red ones are the ones located right here. And the other one with cooler colors are the ones in this area.
So it doesn't matter the background, it's like the actual fracture, because I see blue, but there's also blue fractures. Are they the same thing or not?
Look, all the red fractures, let's say that the north is in this direction.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
All the red fractures have a strike which is more or less east-west.
Yes.
And the other cooler fractures, they have a strike which is more like north-south.
So the blue color is the fracture, not the background color, right?
The color, so all of these are small rectangles meant to
Okay.
represent the fracture. The color represents where they are in the 3D Mohr circle.
Okay.
Closer or further away from shear failure. And what is this?
Stereonet.
This is stereonet. Many of you may not be familiar with stereonets, okay? And I'm not going to ask you right now to be familiar with stereonets, but I added an extra point in what did I do with that? Okay, no, that was I added an extra point that if you go to files, you already see the second project, and not in the printed version I gave you, but in the new one, I'm adding 2 points that you may want to do them or not. It's up to you, okay? If you don't do it, that's fine. But if you want to do it, that's great. And I'll take it. In which I'm going to ask you to color each of the symbols according to the ratio of shear to normal stress. Very similar to what we just saw in that image. Jajin, the TA, is very good at doing these plots. So you can ask him for help about that. But basically, you are adding a third dimension to a 2D plot because you're using a color to plot another variable. It's very important, guys, that you know how to plot things very well, because summarizing a lot of information in a good plot is very important for communication, for papers, for presentations, and for many things. So that would be the first one, that you add color to that 3D Mohr circle, and the second one is that you use a stereonet projection and you do what it has been done in this example, which is to color. You can either color the background, that would be a little bit more difficult, or you could just color each of the folds according to where they are in the 3D Mohr circle. In this particular case, what this is telling you is that the faults which are more likely to be reactivated are the ones over here. And this stereonet, it summarizes the orientation of a plane, but just with one point. And I gave you the link over here, okay? Section 522. So I'm gonna go directly over here to that. And I have a brief explanation there about stereonets. But basically with stereonet projection, you project the intersection of a vector normal to the plane on what is called a lower hemisphere projection. And that lower hemisphere projection, when you look from the top, just looks like this. Where that intersection falls, which in this case is going to be here, is going to tell you what is the strike of the plane and the dip. The strike is going to be, for this particular case, in this location, and the dip is going to be, in this case, in that particular direction, because the normal point is over here. So, in summary, this stereonet is going to help you locate planes in a 2D plot. And from these points, you can tell what is the strike and what is the dip. Let's look at this point. The strike is going to be given by how far this is from over there, from the north. And in this case, the strike is this angle minus 90, which may be 30 degrees now. And the dip is going to be how far this point is from the edge to the center. If it's in the edge, the dip is going to be 90 degrees. If it's in the center, this is going to be a horizontal plane because that arrow will go direct to the center. So, in this particular case, where the point is over there, this is meaning that the dip is about 60 degrees. Actually that way, 60 degrees that way, because that arrow is hitting the point somewhere close to 6.
Can you show us again how you measure the strike?
The strike, so connect this point with that point, right? You go 90 degrees in this direction and you get this line.
Yes.
That's the direction of strike.
Okay.
There is another resource that I recommend that you take a look at, and it's right over here. It's an app that allows you to, let's see, we have the point somewhere over here, right? Or let me go to this case. All right, so this is a stereonet projection, and it tells me where are the points which are more likely to be reactivated in shear. Okay, so just solve it on your own. Don't tell me the number. What is the dip and strike of these faults more likely to be reactivated? The Mohr circle is telling me that they will be here and there. But apparently, in this particular case, there are no fractures in this particular orientation, but there are many in that one. So what would be the strike and dip of those? Just think about the solution, and we'll see the solution with this widget now. Okay? So, you have the solution? All right. So let's go over here. Another one, this one. I'm going to make double click over there, and that's the dot. And let me do a few so it's more obvious. the strike is going to be east-west, this is the north, and the tip is relatively steep, and in this case about 60 degrees. When you look from the top, this is what you see, and when you look at this is what you see over here. So the stereonet projection allows you to summarize very nicely where your fractures are with strike and tip. And if you combine that, for example, with the Mohr circle, you can tell which is the set of fractures which is going to be reactivated in shear. For example, I'm coming again to the example of microseismicity or induced seismicity. If you were to induce microseismicity, the fractures that are going to induce microseismicity are going to be these ones. They're not going to be those ones. Are going to be these ones. And that's super important because, for example, if we were interested in increasing permeability through shear reactivation, the ones that are going to be reactivated are the red ones. And the direction in which permeability is going to increase is in this direction, and also in that direction. But most in this direction, not in this direction. One more question in order to follow this, to close with this example. Imagine this is a naturally fractured reservoir. You have figured out the stresses. You have figured out which ones are going to be most likely to be reactivated in shear. And you have to place a horizontal wellbore. Just one, because you cannot put many, just one. In which direction would you put that wellbore? This is the north. The north is in that direction. Would you put a wellbore north-south, east-west, at an angle? What do you think?
Northwest.
Northwest, why?
Well,
Northwest?
I guess I don't know about like, will your wellbore, if those are